Robots and Nightfall in Eternity. Oh my. Hello, good evening, and welcome. This is the second video on Isaac Asimov's works, and we're going to talk specifically about some of his other works and also the Robot series. So let's get started. First, we're going to talk about a few of his short stories, collection of short stories. So, as I mentioned in the other video, at the time when Asimov first started writing, there was wasn't much of a market for science fiction novels. So what he did was he would write short stories which would appear in Astounding magazine, that sort of thing. So these are Nine Tomorrows, Winds of Change, Earth is Room Enough. These are collections of some of his short stories. So if you like stuff, they're various different stories about with a theme collected together. Nine Tomorrow is all about various tomorrow. These ones all regarding Earth. Give them a look. They're a great way to, if you want to read some of his old original stories. It's a great way to get them in these collected works, because you're unlikely to find them in copies of Astounding magazine, or the cost would be prohibitive. So let's talk about some of his other novels. So, Fantastic Voyage. It's something probably everyone has heard of. I believe it was turned into a movie. It's the novel of shrinking down into a spaceship and going through a person's body. Season 1 or 2 of Rick and Morty, they did a roast of that, so to speak. Good novel. The Gods Themselves. I don't remember this one as much as I do the other ones, but it's a three-parter and has to do with a parallel universe, a para-universe, and exchange of energy between them. But there's sort of three different stories which are set together, and it's a little strange also, in that it starts in chapter 6, and that is not an error. Anyway, check it out. It's good. This one is one of my favorites, The End of Eternity, and it also, as an aside, it also rolls into the Robot and the Foundation series later. I won't really tell you why, but anyway, it's about this group called Eternity, and what they have, humans have invented an ability to travel through time on a single timeline, and they go about, first of all, they need to make sure that Eternity, their organization, exists, but they also travel between the 27th century up to the 100,000th. So the idea is that they control this, but they also they trade between them, that sort of thing. It's an organization like Men in Black or something that oversees this. So I don't want to give away too much of it, but the book revolves around the end of this organization, Eternity. And it's kind of like his novels. It's sort of mystery detective work with a little bit of sociological commentary thrown in, and an examination of that. It's a good book. I really enjoy it. I love the way how it ends and how it ties into those other two series. Nightfall. I'm going to a little bit of spoilers in this one. It's based on a short story that he expanded. So the story is originally about a an archaeologist who, first of all, this isn't doesn't take place on Earth. An archaeologist who finds that their civilization is not the only civilization, and there has been an advanced civilization uh, before this present civilization as well. By digging further, he finds that there are even more advanced civilizations below this civilization, below their civilization and the one he's found, and they all seem to, last a specific set amount of time, and they all seem to be the same amount of time. So it's a big mystery. So the planet that they inhabit is near the core of the closer to the core of the galaxy than we are. And spoiler alert, um, the story revolves around the fact that they've never seen the stars because they have a number of moons. There's always um, enough light that it never goes fully dark. So um, the interval of time where their civilization ends happens to coincide with a complete eclipse where everything is dark and people go crazy, and that's the fall of their civilization. So that was the original short story. So this novel is a bit longer, includes that portion, but it also talks about what happens after. So I hope I haven't spoiled it too much for you, but I won't talk anything about what happens afterwards, and you can discover that yourself. All right, let's move on to the robot series. So the first of the robot series is iRobot. Happens to be named after I believe the movie was with Will Smith in 2004 was named that as well. This is actually a collection of short stories. So Asimov first wrote his robot short stories, and they revolve primarily around Susan Calvin, who was a robot psychologist. So each of these short stories revolves around some sort of problem somewhere with a robot, and she will go and investigate it and find out what's wrong. And it's never the it's not usually the robots, anything wrong with the robots in the sense that they're doing what they're supposed to do, but somehow their programming or something has been changed, or it hasn't been put together correctly, or there's some sort of event that nobody anticipated that puts the robot in some sort of balance, things like that. So good stories, nice, short, interesting ones. Susan Calvin appears through, I don't know if all of them, but many of them. So you kind of get to know her, and she ages as, some are early in her career, some later. So it's, a great set. Uh, Important to science fiction because the whole three laws of robotics that Asimov lays down, which will come with all his robots. And the interesting thing about the three laws is it's something that I have read articles about. Present people inventing and building robots, thinking of putting in something like that into our present day robots in order to, how are we going to stop this machine from turning on us? Perhaps we need something like the three laws in our own robots. So if that's true and we ever do that, says something about a science fiction writer where he changes the way we look at our technology, and maybe prevents us from being prevents a Terminator type situation in our future. So the four robot novels are The Caves of Steel, The Naked Sun, Robots of Dawn, and the fourth one, which I don't have a copy of, which I can't. I'm surprised. Robots and Empire. So these take place outside of the Susan Calvin world, much farther in the future, and they they deal with um, the they primarily deal with the character of uh, the robot of R. Daniel and the a character um, uh, the character Elijah Bailey and their stories. Um, I don't want to I don't want to give you too much about what it is, but it's their adventures. It is the interesting thing, again, as I've mentioned earlier, is that the Robot series and the Foundation series are later on um, rolled together, and that happens in Forward the Foundation and Prelude to Foundation. So um, if you read, as long as you don't read those first, you won't sort of you won't find out what the situation is, and I won't spoil it for you. But they're all excellent novels. Again, highly recommended. And there are three other robot novels which are not written by Asimov. They are. My understanding is that close to his death, he wrote up an outline for a bunch of new robot novels, but then died before he got a chance to write them. So Roger McBride Allen took upon to write it, and these are the second and third ones. The first one is called Caliban. Second one Inferno, and then Utopia. And if you enjoyed the robot stuff, go ahead afterwards. Give these three a try. I enjoyed them. It's not Asimov, but it's based on his plot outline. So how bad could it be, right? Maybe you like Roger McBride Allen yourself. So I hope this gave you a bit of a insight into some of Asimov's other works. For this video, I started reading some more of Asimov's stuff, but I wanted to find out. I really wanted to define to you, my listener, what it is. Why is Asimov's books do so well? Um, I always liked The End of Eternity, so I read it again, and as I was reading it, I read it, first of all, I read it in less than 24 hours. While I was reading it, I kept thinking to myself, this would make a great movie. Partway halfway through, I said, this would be a great movie. But however, by the end of it, I was saying to myself, wait a second, this would be really difficult to make into a great movie. And I think that is demonstrated well by the Will Smith 2004 iRobot movie. It really has nothing to do with any of the robot books, and in fact, it was criticized when it first came out as being sort of the opposite of what Asimov did in his stories. His stories are always very positive about science and that the robots, could be a force for good. And the movie, the Will Smith movie, basically has the robot is the murderer in a sense. I mean, it does kill as it's asked to do. So I thought that I'd love to take credit for this observation, but I actually read it in one of Asimov's books. He says that when he was preparing to write Foundation's Edge, he hadn't written. He had written the Foundation series 30 years before, so he had to read the whole series to figure out what was going on and remember the details of what happened, so he could write the next novel. So he says, I read it, being the Foundation series, with mounting uneasiness. I kept waiting for something to happen, and nothing ever did. All 3 volumes, all the nearly 250,000 words, consisted of thoughts and conversations. No action, no physical suspense. And that's true. I thought, I'm reading End of Eternity thinking, the suspense is great. This would make a great movie. And then I thought again later, and I'm like, but there's no action. There's nothing, it would never make it into a movie nowadays. What was all the fuss about? Asimov says, why did everyone want more of that stuff? To be sure, I couldn't help notice that I was turning the pages eagerly and that I was upset when I finished the book and that I wanted more. So this is the author saying he wanted more. So what the heck is up with that? There's no suspense, or there's suspense. There's no action. It's everything cool that would make a great movie takes place off stage. But why is this one of the best science fiction series of all times? I mean, it won Hugo Award for that. So he says here that science fiction writer and critic James Gunn said this, and I think this is very true. Quote, action and romance have little to do with the success of the trilogy. Virtually all the action takes place off stage, and the romance is almost invisible. But the stories provide a detective story fascination with the permutations and reversals of ideas. And that is exactly it. Um, I don't like detective stories or of Sam Spade type or mystery novels, but I love Foundation. It's it's that detective like quality keeps you keep reading. It's the game one more. It's the gamer one more turn thing. One more page, one more chapter. You can't put it down. I mean, I've read End of Eternity a bunch of times, but the past day I've been reading it and I couldn't put it down. I read it in less than 24 hours easily. So, I'm trying to get people to interest in some of these golden era science fiction novels because I think the stories are great. So I think this is the sort of key thing that should uh, tell you if you are going to like the novel or not, if you're going to like his style or not. If it's a page turner, you can't stop, you can't put it down. Try it yourself. Read the first short story of Foundation. Read the first story of one of the stories from IRobot from his short story collection. And if you like it, you'll be hooked, and you'll have hours and hours of entertainment reading the rest of his stuff. All right, that's it. Thanks from Fiction Snob, and good reading.